What up, y'all? Welcome back to Fight Talk with me, Jimmy Dukes. Today, we're going to be diving into KFL 4. We'll be doing a recap of the fights. KFL 4 went down August 23rd here in El Paso, Texas, at the Almeida Shrine, if I'm not mistaken, if saying that messed up. But yeah, 10 great fights. Shout out to Kingdom Fight League for having me out to cover the fights. But I'm going to be doing these recaps for anybody who may have missed the event. 10 amateur fights, 2 of those title fights. Let's dive into it. First fight of the night, we had Robert Cardile versus Carlo Alvarado. This was Alvarado's amateur debut versus a skilled Rober fighting out of Warriors Lair MMA. And the fight went well. It did go the distance, 3 rounds, but Rober looked great. I've seen him fight in Smokers. I've seen him fight for other promotions. Man, he kept the distance, a lot of leg kicks, a lot of punches, had some head kicks in there. And Carlo wasn't even, had the opportunity to really use his heavy wrestling background that he has with Empire MMA. But man, it was a fun fight to watch. Carlo does have a potential to really push the needle here in this amateur area. He was tough. I mean, a lot of guys would have probably went down. He took Rober's best punches and kicks. He tried to take him down. It didn't work for him, but Rober looked good. In my opinion, he won all 3 rounds and got the job done that day. I do look forward to seeing Rober fight again. He's evolving as a mixed martial artist himself. I've always telling him, man, you look good. And Carlo, man, has a lot of potential. He does train with some animals out there in Empire MMA. But yeah, man, Rober looked good. He did get that decision win for the first fight of the night. Second fight of the night, we had Isaiah Solaita versus Jaden Thomas. Isaiah fighting out of Otero Sports in Alamogordo. And Jaden coming into town from Dallas from War Room. And unfortunately, it was I was excited to see this go back and forth, but unfortunately, Jaden suffered a injury during an exchange early in the first round. And Solaita took advantage of it until verbal tap, I guess you could say, to the referee. And Solaita looked good. I mean, I know he has been on a skid lately fighting himself. But, man, he looked great to step in there versus Jaden. Jaden was making his amateur MMA debut. He really didn't get to showcase any of his skills. I know we had him on the show, and he was talking about wanting to go out there and showcase what he's been training, for his family and friends. But I do hope he has a speedy recovery. He did have an arm or shoulder injury. I'm not for sure. But Solaita gets a win. He's been on a skid, like I said, fighting for other promotions, but it looked good for him to kind of get that one out of the way and get back on the winning side. And we look forward to seeing Isaiah fight next month for Empire. And, Jaden, I hope he has a speedy recovery because he does have a bright future in this sport. Next fight on the card, we had Thomas Haney fighting out of Desert Dynasty. And we had Angel Briseño. We've seen Angel fight before for KFL. And, man, this was back and forth. This was a very entertaining fight. A lot of grappling exchanges, rolling back and forth. Thomas making his MMA amateur debut looked good against a game Briseño. Briseño looked like he couldn't get a lot of things off, from my opinion, from what I saw. He was on the bottom a lot, trying to get away from Thomas's continuing pressure from up top. But it did go back and forth throughout the 3 rounds. I thought Angel didn't look as good as he normally did. I'm not sure because Thomas was just so heavy with the grappling exchanges. Angel wasn't able to get up. Usually Angel is tough as nails, man. I've seen him fight for Empire. I've seen him fight for KFL. He's always game. But Thomas, came out of nowhere making his amateur debut and fighting a guy with experience already to go in there and decisively win, unanimous decision over Angel. I think Thomas has a really bright future here in the Southwest in the amateur scene, and I look forward to see his next fight. And, Angel, we'll see him out in Empire next month fighting once again and see if we could right those wrongs. But, man, great fight. Both young guys, very tough competitors and, back and forth exchange. But I love seeing those kind of fights, man. Man, this next one was crazy. A lot of back and forth action. We had two amateur debuts. Gabe Rodriguez out of Empire MMA. We had William Ortiz as a Desert Dynasty. And man, William is a damn Terminator. He just kept coming forward. Gabe was giving him everything he had and the kitchen sink, man. But man, a lot of back and forth between these two young guys. If you guys don't know about Gabe Rodriguez, he has a lot of hype behind him. Extensive wrestling career, some amateur boxing. You know, his dad was a pro fighter himself, so he grew up in a household where, you know, fighting was a thing and got to see pros, I'm sure, all the time. But man, William was game. You know, this guy, this kid, you know, he had his sweater on, he had his glasses on, and when he took off that sweater and he took off his glasses, damn, I was like, holy crap. But it was awesome to see those two guys fight each other at such a young age, you know, to test each other. I feel like Gabe has a lot of potential to keep moving up. You know, he has a lot of hype. He has great training partners over there at Empire. And William, you know, this is just a start for him as well, too, you know, at such a young age. And to see him go in there against a tough opponent as a first fight, you know what I mean? As a first amateur fight for both of them, you know, that's pretty tough. You know, I've been around a lot of amateur fights now to where I can see, like, if your first amateur fight is either like you squash one guy or it's kind of close. But man, these guys were both tough. And I look forward for both of them, you know, to fighting here in the Southwest. You know, Gabe has a lot of hype behind him, and he said the hype is real. You know what I mean? And William, you know, if I'm not mistaken, is fighting at CFC next. So, you know, shout out to both those guys for putting on a performance. Gabe gets it done via TKO in the third round. Got the takedown, finished with the strikes. But man, great fight. You know, shout out to Gabe for getting it done. And, you know, Will, only sky's the limit for here, man. I look forward to these guys' future careers here in the Southwest. Next fight, in my opinion, was one of the most entertaining fights of the night. Talk about Rock'em Sock'em. We had Darius Allen versus Jason Coleman. Darius was making his amateur debut. You know, Jason's had a lot of exhibition fights in Muay Thai. He's fought for KFL before. So, very back and forth. You know, these guys were tagging each other. I was there, and you just hear the crowd go, oh, oh, ooh, back and forth. And, you know, credit to Jason, man. He kept coming forward. He was tagging Darius, and Darius was just kind of weathering the storm. They would kind of take turns hitting each other until eventually in the third round, Jason was looking like it was the start to the finish. Tagging, going forward. Darius blocking, just threw a big over and just tagged Jason. Jason went down, looked up, referee called it. Man, people were going crazy. Yeah, Darius was like, yeah, and then just immediately laid down, man. They guys were going at it, man. They were both exhausted. But, you know, shout out to both of them for putting on such a great performance. You know, but Darius gets it done in his first amateur MMA debut and moves to 1-0. And Jason moves down to 0-2 in his amateur MMA career. But look forward to seeing those guys' future here in the Southwest as well. Next fight of the night, the big boys. Heavyweight fight. Damn, Micah Bear versus Joaquis Darren. You know, both have fought. They fought at KFL 3. Micah got the win there. Darren lost the last one. So this matchup was very interesting. Micah did take the fight on late notice. Darren was waiting. I think he went through 3 different opponent changes. They offered him Micah. He said yes. You know, so shout out to Darren for taking the fight, and shout out to Micah for saving the fight. You know, heavyweight division, nothing to play with. You know, I mean, it could end early and fast. You know, but this one went 2 rounds. A lot of back and forth. Micah was using those kicks. Darren was trying to get in. He's a shorter heavyweight. And Micah looked good, just kind of keeping on the outside, kicks. Darren was trying to get on the inside, wrestle a little bit. But eventually it got to the point to where in the second round, Darren went for a takedown. Micah was able to, you know, stuff the takedown, get around to the back, and, you know, pound him out to end the fight. So Micah looked good. You know, he did call out for a heavyweight title fight. You know, that makes him 2-0 in KFL, and I'm not mistaken, he has another fight coming up at CFC as well. Darren does move down to 0-2, but I see Darren, making some moves. I've spoke with him and always kept in touch with him, man. It feels like he's game for anybody. So, I mean, in the heavyweight division here in the Southwest, I mean, anything could happen when it comes to those higher weight classes. One punch is all it takes, but Micah gets it done this one at KFL 4. Maybe a title shot at KFL 5. We'll see. Moving up from there, we had the old guy versus the young guy. We had Jed Powell out of Otero Sports fighting newcomer Laith Granado out of Carlsbad. Jed was on a 2-fight win streak, 2 submission finishes, and Laith was making his amateur debut. This, I had no idea who Laith was. All I heard from Lamar was like, this kid is, supposed to be good. I mean, he pretty much said that during our sit down with Lonnie and Lamar for the fight talk. And man, Laith looked good. He looks young, strong, and Jed is one of those guys. He's a quiet guy, but man, he gets it done. He gets it done. He's had 2 submission wins. So I just wanted to see how this fight was going to play out. Laith literally just came out throwing punches, throwing kicks, and caught Jed. Jed backed up. Jed was trying to exchange. Eventually, Laith threw a kick and an overhand, dropped Jed, and ended the fight there, TKO. Man, Laith was going crazy. Man, he looked good. He also got his promotion belt there in the cage, so shout out to him, man. But making a statement in his amateur debut, man. Laith looked good out of Carlsbad. And Jed moves down to 2-1. And Laith, he goes 1-0 for his career, man. So I'm excited to see where Laith goes from here. Obviously, that was his first fight. Jed moves down to 2-1. I know he's still a killer. You know what I mean? He might not say much, but that guy will fight anybody. But, youth wins in this matchup at KFL 4. Moving up to our feature fight of the night, we had Jeremy Robles versus Colleen Carter. These guys are well respected already, moving up through their career in the amateur ranks. Colleen did take this fight on a shorter notice. But man, what a back and forth. A lot of kicking between those two. It felt like I was kind of watching a pro fight there, in my opinion, the way these guys are so poised. One thing that I've seen when guys start fighting in the amateur, they're less spazzy and they're just more set and more calculated. And neither of them was overexerting themselves with like the punches and the kicks. But man, they were kicking their crap out of each other. And Jeremy slowly over time was kind of implementing his game, forcing the kicks. In the second round, Jeremy pretty much started the finish, got a couple kicks in, went for the takedown, and eventually got the rear naked choke to move up to 4-1 in his amateur career. Jeremy's been putting a lot of time training all over the world now. He fights out of Warrior's Lair. He's all over the place in El Paso training with some of the best. And, Carter fighting out of Albuquerque, out of Nobody's Villain. He has a great camp up there with Dobson. And, I see him bouncing back, having a full camp to go in there, to get back in there to fight again whenever he's ready. I'm excited for him to go back there because that guy's tough. He's really disciplined. He's a cool guy. I've been around him in the back. So that was the first time I got to see him fight. So, man, he looked good. And, man, like I said, that looked like a pro fight. But Robles gets it done this time at KFL 4. Moving up to the co-main fight of the night, we had the lightweight amateur title on the line. We had Jimmy Benton out of War Room in Dallas. And we had Ken Modoc Melton out of Warrior's Lair. Quick little backstory for this fight. Jimmy's initial opponent, Paul, couldn't fight due to medical conditions. And Ken ended up taking this fight on that same day's notice, to shout out to him to, challenging himself and moving up. And another little quick thing, too, shout out to Mario Marquez for stepping aside gracefully and letting Ken take that fight. Ken and Mario were initially supposed to fight, but Ken went ahead and took that fight on the same day's notice. And man, for as long as it lasted, it was exciting. In my opinion, I think there was a good size advantage. Jimmy looked great, lean, starting far away. Ken was trying to get on the inside. Eventually, Jimmy got the takedown. Was moving, working. Ken was trying his best from this back, to try to get up, and eventually Jimmy went ahead and finished the fight via strikes. But man, shout out to Jimmy for coming in and taking that fight as well, and Ken, moving up and wanting to fight that. I love seeing that kind of stuff. I don't think that much is ever spoken about the respect in the back. With Mario stepping aside and saying, hey, you know what, go ahead and take the fight. Ken stepping up for an exciting challenge, and Jimmy coming in to town and getting it done. I know Jimmy has a lot of fights that were canceled, and that was one of the things he said in the post interview. He said he wants to move up to pro. He's tired of these people kind of like, I think if it was my mistake, it was like 4 or 5 fights that were canceled in a row for him. So I can see how that's definitely could be frustrating for him. So I wish him the best in the pro scene, and want to keep up with him. And Ken is gonna get right back on the horse. I know him, man. He is an animal as well. But man, Jimmy gets it done via TKO and gets the belt for KFL at KFL 4. Top of the card, main fight of KFL 4. We had the featherweight amateur belt on the line, vacant. We had Jack the Axe Nickel versus Elijah Lionheart Quinn. Jack out of Yokai. Got that right, Ari. I got you, brother. And we had Elijah out of Punishers MMA in silver. And this fight was exactly what I thought I was going to see. As far as, they were both tough. I've been fortunate to see these guys both fight. I've seen Jack fight twice under the KFL banner. I've seen Elijah fight for KFL and another promotion as well for Southwest Bra. So when that title fight was set up, first of all, it was at 145, and I was like, holy smokes. And, they were both fighting each other, and it made sense. It made sense. Now that I'm getting to see how these promotions are, setting up these fights, it totally makes sense. Both of them were, Jack was on a 2-fight win streak. Elijah just recently had won the Southwest Bra belt. And, man, when those two guys went at it, it was fun to watch. Jack was getting the early advantage, in my opinion, in the fight. Was tagging, punches, kicks, high kicks. But Elijah kept coming forward. Elijah's one of my favorite fighters to watch because he is game always. He always comes forward. He'll eat a lot of punches. He'll eat a lot of leg kicks. And, if he gets a hold of you, it's pretty much going to be a rough night at the office. But Jack, from my understanding, they were working that distance a lot. And towards the 4th round and the 5th round, because it was a title fight, man, Elijah, it seemed like the tide was turning. In my opinion. Jack looked like he was slowing down, still kind of keeping his range, doing damage. But Elijah was getting a hold of him, tagging him through some knees. But eventually, the fight did end. And, Jack did went ahead and got that unanimous decision to win the belt at 145. But, man, what a fight. What a fight for both of them. This looked like a pro fight to me because both guys, in my opinion, one thing I always notice about fighters is that how they use their energy and how they move forward and backwards and don't take any crazy risk when they don't need to. And both of them look game. I know Jack, he's at a small gym, but man, they're killers. He's got James in there, Pleasant. If you guys don't know him, here, one of the best fighters out of El Paso, in my opinion. You know what I mean, up there with AJ and Piggy. But yeah, man, having that guy around in the gym and Ari, what they got going on at Yokai, great. And then, of course, Elijah, Punishers, MMA out in Silver, man. Those guys are animals too, man. I know they're beating the crap out of each other out there. And one thing I always like about Elijah, that guy's always training, just like Jack. So for those two guys to fight, at that point in their amateur career is great because they gotta test each other and have an idea, because fights like that, just moving upwards, It's gonna be tougher. You know, Jack moves up to 3-0 in his amateur career. Elijah 3-3, 6 fight under his belt. And I'm just excited for both of them. I want to see what Jack can do at that 145 weight class. I feel like that is a better weight class for him, in my opinion, for his size and his stature. And Elijah, man, at 45 is crazy because he's such a big dude. But from my understanding, I know Elijah has a fight in November sometime, maybe. I know Jack is probably gonna sit back and see what's going on. I know they make fights when it makes sense. So shout out to both of them for putting on a great championship fight. I feel like that was the crowd got a treat because you got to see two high level amateur fighters here in the region fight each other. And those guys, I see them fighting in the pros, not against each other, but I see them fighting in the pros as well, the way they carry themselves. So shout out to them for putting it all on the line, but Jack gets it done via unanimous decision. That was it. KFL 4 delivered. Shout out to Kingdom Fight League for getting that done and putting on another great show. Shout out to Lonnie Lamar for having me out. Shout out to everybody who showed up. There was a great crowd. I love to see that the sport is growing here in the Southwest and booming here in El Paso with all the different promotions. But KFL puts on another great show at the Shrine. Shout out to all the fighters that went out there, man. I tell people all the time, man, this amateur scene is blowing up around here. It is a great time to start paying attention. There's a lot of great athletes out there that are fighting from different disciplines and, going into the cage and testing themselves against some other guys in the region. So I look forward to doing these recaps more often. Once again, shout out to Kingdom Fight League for having me out to cover the event. Shout out to all the fighters. Shout out to all the people that said what's up to me. You know what I mean? Keep up with me on daily content at Jimmy Dukes Combat on Instagram. All the major videos and all the fight content are here on the Jimmy Dukes Rodriguez YouTube channel. Make sure you guys hit that like, hit that subscribe, all that good stuff. I appreciate all your guys' continuing time and support. But until next time, we'll see you at the fights. Peace out, homies.